Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 5, The Flatwoods Monster.
Tonight, we're diving into a really strange one from West Virginia, the Flatwoods Monster.
Happened back in, 52? September 12th?
That's the date, September 12th, 1952. It all started with this bright light people saw shooting across the sky over Flatwoods in Braxton County.
Right, like a meteor maybe, but then it seemed to come down near a local farm.
Exactly. It wasn't just a quick flash. It looked like it landed or crashed or something on a farmer's property. And that's where the legend really kicks off. People call it the Braxton County Monster, sometimes Braxy, even the Phantom of Flatwoods.
So who saw it first? There were some kids involved, weren't there?
Yeah, initially it was two brothers, Edward and Fred May, and their friend Tommy Heyer. They saw the object come down.
Okay, so they see this thing land. What do three kids do? Run home, I imagine.
Pretty much. They ran back and told the boy's mother, Kathleen May. And, well, curiosity must have gotten the better of them all.
So she didn't just dismiss it.
Nope. She actually gathered a larger group to go investigate. It was the original three boys, plus herself, Neil Nunley, Ronnie Shaver, and, interestingly, a West Virginia National Guardsman named Eugene Lemon.
A guardsman. Okay, so it's becoming a bit more serious than just kids seeing a light.
Definitely has a layer, yeah. So this group, with flashlights and probably quite a bit of nervous energy, heads towards where the boys saw the object land on G. Bailey Fisher's farm.
And this is where it gets really weird, right? As they get closer.
This is the moment. They get to the top of this hill, and Neil Nunley, one of the kids, spots this pulsing red light off in the distance.
The pulsing red light. Okay.
So Lemon, the guardsman, points his flashlight towards it, and that's when he apparently catches a glimpse, just a quick look, at this tall, man-like figure.
Man-like?
Yeah.
But not quite human, I'm guessing, given the legend.
Well, the descriptions start coming thick and fast after that, and let's just say they're varied and pretty bizarre.
Okay, so what did they think they saw? I know Gray Barker wrote about it.
Right. Gray Barker, famous 14 writer, he covered it for Feet magazine. His account, based on interviews, paints this picture of something huge, maybe 10 feet tall.
10 feet? Wow.
Yeah. And it had this round, blood-red face, apparently. And on top, this large, pointed, kind of hood-like shape.
A hood, okay.
Plus, Barker mentioned glowing, sort of greenish-orange eye-like shapes. And the body was described as dark black or maybe green. It's a real monster description.
Definitely sounds like something out of a nightmare.
Nice.
But that was Barker's take. Did the actual witnesses, like Kathleen May, describe it the same way?
That's where it gets interesting. Kathleen May's description had some overlap, but also key differences. She mentioned small, claw-like hands.
Claw-like hands, okay.
And she talked about folds, like clothing, on the body. But maybe the strangest detail from her was the head. She said it resembled the ace of spades.
The ace of spades? How do you even picture that? Like pointed at the top and wide at the bottom.
It's a really peculiar description, isn't it? It highlights how confusing and maybe subjective the whole thing was in the moment.
Absolutely. And there was more than just the visual, wasn't there? Sounds, smells.
Yeah. They reported hearing this distinct hissing sound coming from the figure.
Hissing. Not growling or anything, but hissing.
Hissing. And the way it moved... And they said it seemed to glide towards them. Not walk, not run, glide.
Okay, that's unnerving. I can see why they'd flee.
Totally. The whole group apparently turned and ran. Lemon, the guardsman, even dropped his flashlight in the panic. They were terrified.
And the smell. I remember reading about a mist or something.
Yes, several of them reported a pungent mist hanging in the air near the site. And later, some of the group complained of feeling nauseous.
Nausea. Could be fear, I suppose. But the mist is odd. Adds another layer of physical evidence, maybe.
It certainly adds to the strangeness. Was it something the creature emitted? Or maybe a reaction to something else entirely? It's part of the puzzle?
So, they flee, they report this. What happens next? Did the authorities check it out?
They did. The local sheriff and a deputy were called, initially thinking it might be a plane crash because of the reports of the light in the sky.
Makes sense.
They went to the hilltop, investigated the area where the group saw the figure, but their official report found nothing. No creature, no strange mist, nothing out of the ordinary.
Huh. Okay, so official channels found zero. But the story didn't die there.
Not at all. Because the next day, a local reporter, Ailey Stewart Jr. from the Braxton Democrat newspaper, went up there.
And he found something. Or claimed to.
He claimed to. Stewart reported finding skid marks in the field near the sighting spot, and also an odd gummy deposit.
Skid marks and gummy stuff. Okay, now that sounds like potential evidence,
Yeah.
especially if you're thinking.
Exactly. UFO groups and saucer enthusiasts immediately jumped on Stewart's report. Skid marks. Gummy residue. Must be from a landed saucer, right? That really fueled the extraterrestrial angle.
Even though the sheriff found nothing the night before.
Hmm.
Interesting how narratives form.
It really is. And this story, I mean, it just took off. We're talking 1952, the dawn of the big UFO craze.
So it hit the news big time.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
National newspapers, radio networks. Everyone was talking about the Flatwoods Monster. Apparently, the National Press Services rated it as the, number 11 biggest story of the year.
Number 11. For a weird monster sighting in rural West Virginia. That's incredible.
Shows you the appetite for that kind of story back then. And all this attention naturally drew investigators.
Not just journalists, I bet.
All sorts.
Oh.
There was a minister from Brooklyn, reporters from bigger cities like Pittsburgh, and of course, the prominent names in UFO and strange phenomena research, like Gray Barker, who we mentioned, and Ivan T. Sanderson.
Sanderson, right. So the big guns of Fortiana showed up. Flatwoods must have been buzzing.
You can imagine. Everyone wanted a piece of the mystery. Everyone wanted to figure out what really happened on that hilltop.
Which brings us to the, well, the less exciting explanations, maybe. The skeptical view.
Yeah, because for every compelling mystery, there are usually attempts to find a more down-to-earth explanation, and Flatwoods is no exception.
So where do the skeptics start? What about that initial bright light?
The Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, particularly investigator Joe Nickel back in 2000, looked into this pretty thoroughly. Their conclusion for the light, almost certainly a meteor.
A meteor. Was there proof?
Well, it lines up perfectly. There were independent reports of a very bright meteor seen across 3 states, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, on that exact same night, September 12, 1952.
Okay, that's pretty strong evidence for the light source. Hard to argue with observations across 3 states.
Seems like the most logical fit for the initial trigger event, yeah. It explains why people looked up, why the kids were drawn to that area.
All right, meteor explains the streak. What about the pulsing red light the group saw on the hilltop just before seeing the figure?
Nickel and others point to something much more mundane. Aircraft warning lights or hazard beacons.
Beacons? Like on radio towers or something?
Exactly. Turns out there were 3 flashing red aviation beacons visible from that area back in '52. A pulsing red light low on a hillside. It could easily have been one of those beacons, maybe seen through trees or distorted by the atmosphere.
And that could explain the red tint on the monster's face that some reported. The light from the beacon.
That's the idea. The ambient red pulsing light could have easily colored whatever they were actually looking at.
Okay. So, meteor, aircraft beacon.
Yeah.
What's left? The actual 10-foot-tall, ace of spades-headed, gliding creature itself. How do you explain that away?
This is the most fascinating part of the skeptical take, I think. Joe Nickel makes a compelling case that the monster was most likely a barn owl.
A barn owl. Seriously. How does a bird become a 10-foot monster?
Okay, hang on. It sounds wild, but think about it. It's dark. They're scared. They've just seen weird lights. Their adrenaline is pumping. They shine a flashlight.
And they see.
A large barn owl perched on a tree limb, maybe lower down than they realized. Barn owls have these big, pale, heart-shaped faces that can look really alien in poor lighting. They can have a wingspan up to, 4 feet.
4 feet is not 10 feet, though.
True, but perception gets skewed. And Nichols suggests that maybe foliage or lower branches below the owl created the illusion of a larger body cape extending downwards. That could be the pleated green skirt or the folds people described.
Foliage making up the lower body? Okay, I can sort of see that possibility in the dark. What about the claw-like hands?
An owl perched on a branch has its talons gripping the wood, pointing forward. In a quick, frightened glimpse with a flashlight beam, could those talons look like small, sharp hands? It's plausible.
The head. The ace of spades.
The distinctive heart shape of a barn owl's facial disc, especially when maybe silhouetted or lit strangely from below by the flashlight. It could perhaps be interpreted as that odd shape by someone expecting something monstrous.
And the gliding. And the hissing.
Barn owls often hiss or screech loudly when startled, really raspy, eerie sounds. That fits the hissing perfectly. And when an owl takes flight, especially launching from a low branch, it can appear to swoop or glide silently before gaining height.
Okay, the owl theory. It does seem to tick a lot of boxes, doesn't it? Sounds, shape, movement, even the hands.
It connects a surprising number of dots using known animal behavior and the circumstances of the sighting.
What about those skid marks and the gummy deposit the reporter found? An owl didn't leave those.
Right. Skeptic Ryan Hopt looked into that. He pointed out that a local kid, Max Lockard, admitted later he'd driven his Chevy truck around that field that same night, hoping to see the monster himself.
So the tracks and maybe some oil or grease from the truck.
That's the suggestion. It seems much more likely than residue from an alien spaceship, especially since the sheriff found nothing initially. Paranormal investigators tend to dismiss this, but it's a very simple explanation.
And the nausea, just panic and running around.
Hope suggested it was likely symptoms of hysteria, basically extreme fear and anxiety, combined with the physical exertion of running away in the dark. Totally understandable physical reactions.
So when you put it all together, meteor, beacon, startled owl, seen in the dark by frightened people, it does paint a picture of a likely misidentification, however terrifying it was for them at the time.
It seems to be the most coherent explanation based on the available evidence, yeah. But the story, the legend itself, that took on a whole different life.
It really did. Flatwoods didn't bury the story, did they? They embraced it.
Oh, completely. You drive into Flatwoods, the welcome sign says Home of the Green Monster. They have an annual festival called Flatwoods Days.
That's brilliant. And there's a museum now too, right?
Yep, in Sutton, which is the county seat for Braxton County. The Flatwoods Monster Museum. They've got exhibits, merchandise, the works.
And those crazy chairs. I've seen pictures of those.
The monster chairs. The local convention and visitors bureau put up 5 giant chairs shaped like the monster around the county. It's become this fun landmark hunt. Find all 5, get a free Braxy sticker.
That's fantastic marketing, turning local lore into a tourist draw.
Absolutely. And it's permeated pop culture, too.
Right, you see references pop up, video game.
Yeah, it's shown up in Fallout 76, which is set in West Virginia, fittingly. And even a golf game. Everybody's golf for, apparently. Plus, the History Channel show Project Blue Book did an episode specifically on it.
So it's definitely cemented its place in monster lore.
No doubt. It stands alongside West Virginia's other famous cryptids, like Mothman or the Snallygaster. There's something about that region.
Definitely fertile ground for legends. It makes you think about other cases, doesn't it? Like you said, owls being misidentified.
Yeah, there are parallels drawn sometimes with the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter in Kentucky or the Owlman sightings over in Cornwall in the UK. Cases where strange nocturnal figures might just have been large owls seen under weird circumstances.
It's a recurring theme, it seems. The fear of the dark, the way our minds can play tricks, and maybe, just maybe, a startled bird.
It's a potent mix, so while the Flatwoods Monster might well have been, a barn owl having a really bad night thanks to some curious humans, the story itself is powerful.
It speaks to that fascination with the unknown, the things potentially lurking just out of sight. Even if the explanation is simple, the feeling of the encounter was real.
Precisely. The legend endures because the experience, the fear, the mystery that was absolutely genuine for the people involved that night in 1952.
That's the end of the episode. Until next time, keep to the shadows. Some legends are best left undiscovered.